In this chapter, we're going to be looking at the impact of race, gender, and ethnicity in the labor market, and specifically on wages and employment. Now, three of the major demographic groups, and those being women, black, and Hispanics, still earn substantially less than white males do who work, all of which work full-time. Now, when you look at the earnings difference by genders, if you look at women of all ages over the age of 24 and who work full-time, you'll see that they average around 70% of white males earned in 2008. This is up from 67% in 1990 and 58% in 1970 and 80. So that gap has been getting lower, but it still is there. Now, when you talk about the gender wage gap or any wage gap, there are some explanations to why that is. And so those numbers talk about just the overall numbers. So overall, women on average make 70 cents on the dollar that a male makes. Okay. Now, some of these differences can be explained, though, by differences in the measurable characteristics other than gender or race, so forth. The first is by age and education. Now, age and education are the most important and measurable factors that influence earnings. Most recent cohorts of women have levels of schooling at least equal to those of men. All right. So today, women and men have similar education attainments. However, that wasn't always the case. The older generations, men had a higher education attainment than women did. And the other thing to note is that the age earnings profile for women are flatter than the ones for men, meaning that for women who get older, their wage does not increase as much as it does for men. So education is a big difference within pay. And so one of the reasons why that gender wage gap, the average, has been getting lower over time is because, again, women are getting higher levels of education relative to men than they once were. The next way that it can help to explain the change in wages is occupation. Now, on average, women are overrepresented in low-paying occupations and underrepresented in high-paying ones. So some of the difference between the average pay can be determined by the difference in occupational distributions. Now, within the same occupations, it is a lot of times the case that women do end up earning more than men. And so if we look at the table here, we can see some of the different percentage of females in the occupation, the earnings to female to male. And so CEOs, chief executives, the high paying one, women are still making about 76 cents on the dollar. Computer system managers, 88 cents on the dollar. If you look down at low paying, jobs like cashiers, which are 70% women, they still earn a little bit less than men do, 92 cents on the dollar. And you can see that in the high-paying fields, a lot of times women are underrepresented, and then in the lower-paying fields, women are a higher percentage. And so that does help to explain some of that pay difference as well. Something else that explains the differences is hours and experience. And so women, on average, work fewer hours in the labor force or in a job for pay than men do in similar occupations. Now, one of the reasons why is there's an experience gap to where men tend to have more experience within specific jobs on average. And the other reason why is that although this has been shifting in recent years, women more than men tend to be taking time off when a child is born. And so another reason why there is that pay gap is for this reason. Now, there's also what are known as unexplained differences. And these unexplained differences, these are some unobserved characteristics that affect productivity. This is where discrimination comes into play. Women versus men, black versus white, Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. These are all, kind of the other unexplained differences that explain why men make more than women, and so forth. And so even when you factor in the differences in age and education, occupation, hours and experience, even after all that, there still is a wage gap. And the gender wage gap, it's less than the 70 cents on the dollar that we discussed a minute ago, but it still does exist.